So today I'm going to talk about how XR can improve physical therapy. So we're going to get a specific use case here. So a quick overview of my presentation. We can do a quick introduction, talk about physical therapy, some of the current limitations, see if XR could be the perfect solution. We're going to go into the development, some of the application features, and then close out with the current status of the project, some of the key takeaways, and the next steps. So I'm Jevsevar. I'm the co-founder and director of technology at Kairos XR, which, as John said, is a development agency in San Francisco. We focus on building immersive training applications. Last year, I presented here on the 7 steps that we follow to build an XR training application. So this year, I wanted to put those 7 steps in action. So for those of you who missed it, I'll give a SparkNotes version. We want to make sure the client understands where the technology is at, make sure we're setting their expectations. We want to make sure we're doing research to understand what the user will end up needing and how they're going to use it. Do a user flow. This is an alignment tool between us and the client. And then the next 3 is kind of the development, user flow, revision stage, and that kind of loops until we're satisfied, and then make sure that we're following up after we deliver, make sure the stakeholders are happy, make sure that the KPIs are met. So who's the client? In this case, it's Dartmouth-Hitchcock, which is Dartmouth College's medical research center. And Dr. Gatan is a researcher and orthopedic surgeon at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. And she is researching how physical therapy, patients who are prescribed physical therapy are dropping off. Right? There's a high attrition rate. Her team included Cliff Riley, who is running our patient testing. Amy Greenlee is one of the physical therapists there and an advisor on this project. And then Tim Canalites, the other co-founder and director of design on my team. So that's step 1, calling back to last year's presentation. So how many people here have had physical therapy before, just by raise of hand? Okay, so quite a few of you. So those who are raising your hands know that physical therapy is essentially a rehabilitation process to improve a patient's physical functions. This is generally done after a surgery or other physical impairment. So those of you who raised your hands probably also can empathize with some of these limitations. One of the key limitations is that attendance is required. You have to be in the physical therapist office to conduct physical therapy. In Dartmouth-Hitchcock's case, this is problematic because there are patients all over the greater New England area, up to 4 hours away, and so they need to travel to get to this office. Another issue here is the lack of standardization. Different physical therapists teach things slightly different, which is okay. They're all trained professionals, and they're good at what they do, but it makes it difficult for doctors to accurately predict the rehabilitation timeline. And at the very least, this is a painful and boring process. Again, for those of you who raised your hands, you can empathize with that. There's a lot of time invested into this process, and when patients are prescribed homework, essentially practicing some of these exercises, there's a lack of accountability. So this is our generative research step. Brings us into the next one. So we thought VR could be the perfect solution. Right? Again, here's the limitations. Could VR solve these problems? So with that, we created a hypothesis that VR can essentially optimize this program, right? Can optimize physical therapy altogether. With that, the team at Dartmouth set out this pilot study, and the goal of the pilot study was to prove viability, meaning that a patient can enter the VR PT, as we're calling it, virtual reality physical therapy, and complete it start to finish without any assistance. So then the rubber meets the road into the development. Some of the most common physical therapy that's done is on patients recovering from knee surgery. So that's where we started. We focus on that. Here's the 3 exercises that we decided to incorporate into our application. The straight leg raise, the standing squat, and the heel slide. Happy to go through these more later if you're curious. And with this, we were able to outline our user flow and align our expectations with the client's expectations. So what hardware were we using? In this case, we used the HTC Vive and HTC Vive tracking pucks. As you can see here in this image, place one on the foot, one beneath the knee, one above the knee. We also have the tracking from the HMD itself and the controllers. So with this out-of-the-box solution, we are able to track a patient's movement throughout the physical therapy process. So with all the applications we build, onboarding is extremely important. We know that patients are coming from a variety of different backgrounds at different ages and different technical proficiency. We have patients that are teenagers. We have a patient that is 82-year-old, Laura is her name, and she is in this application. So we need to make sure that anyone that's getting in there that's not familiar with the technology has the controls and the know-how to get through the application. You get some of the core features, right? Again, we're trying to get patients from start to finish in the physical therapy process. So on the left here, we have the instruction element, which we're training a patient how to do the exercises, again, focusing on those 3 exercises. And these examples are the heel slide. We want to train the patient on proper form, make sure that they're staying safe, and give them tips to optimize the exercise. But that's only a piece of it. Patients also need to be able to practice this. Right? So once they know how to do the exercise, they need a safe place where they can go in and complete the repetitions and continue their rehabilitation process. So that leads us to the practice arena over here on the right. And to help with that boring aspect, which again, those of you who raised your hands can empathize with, we made a little game. And the game we decided to include here was the tried and true version of catch. So balls are coming at the patient is doing the exercise, as you can see there. And they are focused on catching the balls, and their mind starts to go away from doing the actual exercise. And at any point throughout the entire application, safety is extremely important. If a patient moves their leg in a way that could be dangerous or harmful, the application will pause, provide feedback, and then once they are back in proper form, they can continue. The other aspect of this is an analytics engine that we built into the project. So we're tracking who the patient is, the time they're spending in the application, where they're spending that time, things like reps, incorrect reps, as well as correct reps, max knee flexion, which is knee bend, and max foot height for those leg raises where they're lifting their leg up like this. Since we were tracking that in a database, we plugged it right back into the application and gave the users a dashboard that they could view their statistics on and track their recovery progress. So with that, we got the development process out of the way, and we are into some of the user testing. And one of the things that came up during user testing was that patients were not aware of all the features that were included in the application. Right? They weren't able to find, some of them weren't able to find where the analytics dashboard was. Some patients weren't able to find where you actually adjust the height or the difficulty level in the games, right? And this was preventing people from getting start to finish, right? That's the main goal here. So in our first rounds of user testing, we identified this issue, and the solution that we came up with was providing first-time users with a quick application onboarding, and you can see a bit of that here in this GIF. So that handles our user testing and revision. And so some of the key takeaways here, this was overall a success. We had 40 patients. We've had 40 patients go through this pilot study. It's still going as we speak. The goal is to get to 50 patients. And of the 40 patients that have gone through, they've all been able to complete it. So far, we are hitting our metric that we set out to hit. I'm going to skip that middle one and go over to the analytics. Dr. Gatan is extremely excited about this because now she's going to be able to track if her patients are actually doing their homework, right? And it's equivalent to when you go to the dentist and say that you've been flossing, and the dentist is like, why are your gums bleeding then? We can track that here, right? We can track if they're logging in. We can track if they're going to be doing this at home. But an issue that has arose in this is that we need to reduce the friction, right? We are using this HTC Vive setup, which is great for an in-lab testing where we can set up the environment once and leave it. But if patients are going to take this home and they're going to have any chance of doing this on their own, 82-year-old Laura is probably not going to be able to set up this HTC Vive system, or at the very least, it's going to take her a long time, not to mention when she's recovering from knee surgery. So how do we reduce the friction? This is why I'm presenting here today. So at this point, the delivery has happened. We're maintaining communication with Dr. Gatan and the team, standing by for the next steps. But now we are revisiting our hypothesis. We believe that not VR, but AR is going to be the tool. And why is AR going to be better than VR? In this case, the environmental context is crucial. Not only is there the friction involved with setting up a whole external sensor tracking and putting on a VR headset, but patients during the exercises need to be able to go from a standing position to a seated position, sometimes even laying down. And we noticed that when they have the headset on, they either need to take it off, break immersion to sit down or get situated again and put it back on, or they're kind of stumbling around and it's not the best user experience. So this is where we believe AR will be the improvement. So with that, we've updated our hypothesis. And as our VR iteration of this pilot study closes, which again is done in the lab, we are going to be moving into the second pilot study, which is sending this out to patients' homes. And to do that, we need to make sure, again, that there is minimal friction and that patients can navigate around their environment safely, not to mention things like animals, right? Dogs, cats, and people clearing up a space. They're going to do it in VR. That's problematic, right? We want people to do this in AR so they can see their environment and move around safely. So with that, I would love to talk to anyone who's interested about this next step in the pilot study, moving this application to AR. So I will be out. I'll be here all day. I'll be outside after this if you'd like to discuss more. But the third stage of this will be to scale this up and get this in hundreds of patients' hands. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, Andy.